Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our virtual Q&A. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes before starting properly. I can see that there's still a few people who are filing into the webinar, so we'll just give it a minute before making a proper start. I will ask, just as the numbers are creeping up, just to make sure that all of you who are dialed in can actually hear me, if you can type yes into the chat box that you can see on your screen, that would be a great help. Perfect. Thank you very much. I can see lots of yeses coming through. That's great. Thank you. So good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Hannah Griffiths. I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers on the Oxford MBA. I have a particular focus on Asia Pacific. So that is the region of the world that myself and my team look after. So delighted to be running this session at a time that hopefully is suitable for you guys and will give you the opportunity to send your questions through to us this morning. I'm joined on the webinar by my colleague Megan Winch. Megan is one of our admissions advisors on the Oxford MBA, and she's also on the team that looks after candidates from Asia Pacific as well. So Megan's going to be in the background this morning. We have quite a large number of people who've registered for the webinar and who've dialed in. So just in an attempt to get through as many of your questions as we can, Megan will be typing some answers to some of you who send questions through in the background. And that really is the purpose of this morning's webinar. So normally at this time of year, we would be welcoming some of you to the business school, maybe for campus visits. We would also be traveling a little bit and we'll be running information sessions in different parts of the world and having the opportunity to meet you guys in person. And obviously at the moment, with the restrictions that are in place, those things aren't an option to us. So the idea of this morning's session is just to give you guys a chance to send through any questions that you have. They may be in relation to the MBA program or to our 1+1 program. They might also be in relation to the application process or about the Oxford experience. So you're welcome to send through any questions at all that you have. We do ask that you use the Q&A function on the screen rather than the chat function. So if I can ask you to send through your questions in the Q&A box, that's the easiest way for us to see them and to get through as many of them as we can in the next 45 minutes. So I can see that there is a number of questions coming through. So I'll start with the very first one that's come through, and then I'll work through. I anticipate that we're going to get a lot of questions through this morning. So what I'll try to do as we go across the 45 minutes is identify some that have a common thread to them, and we'll try to give kind of some general answers that hopefully will appeal to lots of you who dialed in this morning. So the first question that has come through is in connection to the application, and is a question about the reduction in the number of essays from last year. So I'm not sure if this is maybe based on the cycle before. So the application process for this year, so for entry in 2021, with the first stage deadline falling this coming Friday, and the application process is the exact same as last year. We did make a change to the application process last year where we did reduce the number of essays. And the reason that we did that was that we introduced an online assessment or video assessment as part of the application process. The reason that we did that was that the application itself is very text heavy, and it's not always easy to get a sense of somebody just through reading the text of their application. So the video assessment aspect of the application really gives you the opportunity to bring your application to life a little bit. So it involves video recording answers to 4 questions The first two questions are motivation based, so asking you to talk a little bit about why you're keen to pursue an MBA, and also to speak a little bit about why the Oxford MBA appeals to you. The third and fourth question that you'll video record answer to are more scenario-based questions. So asking you to give examples of different experiences that you've had across your life and career to date, and give us a sense of how you deal with different scenarios. And those questions are really a great opportunity to show us that you're able to think on your feet, to show us an example of your emotional intelligence, and that you have a strong backing of professional experience that you can draw on that will allow you to contribute to the cohort if you were to join us. The fifth and final question in the online assessment is a written question. It's more of a concept-based question, so something a little bit more out there, along the lines of the sky is blue, the grass is green, which do you prefer and why? And it gives you, it's essentially our opportunity to see that you can write a piece of formulated text under a time pressure, though also does give us a sense of your creativity as well. So that was essentially the reason for reducing the number of essays that were included in the application. We wanted an option that would allow us to get a better sense of our candidates, who they are and what their motivations are. And we have found it extremely helpful. So the last application cycle, all of our applicants completed the online assessment, and it was hugely helpful for us in terms of deciding who we would like to shortlist and take through to interview. So I would say embrace it. It's a really exciting part of the application, and as I said, is a wonderful opportunity for you to bring your application to life a little bit more. So thank you, Drew, for that question. I can see a question here asking about GRE and GMAT scores, and essentially asking if we convert GRE scores to GMAT scores, and the answer to that is yes. So we will convert your GRE score to a GMAT score if you do decide to submit with a GRE score as part of your application. For any of you who are dialed in, who are maybe still trying to work out whether you want to take the GMAT or the GRE, please be aware that both hold equal weight with us, so we don't have a preference for one over the other. A lot of people find that the GRE maybe suits them a little bit better in terms of the style of the test. I would say the split usually in applications is about 75% of applicants will take the GMAT. I think that's just because historically GMAT is the test that's associated with MBA applications, but we have seen an increasing number of applicants take the GRE in recent years. If you do send through a GRE score, we will convert that to a GMAT, and we will essentially look for an equivalent to what we would say is a competitive GMAT score. So the guidance we always give is that a score of 650 or above in a GMAT is considered competitive for us. In GRE, that's converts into a combined score of 321. So you're looking for kind of a 160 verbal and a 161 quant if you're looking for a competitive GRE score. So thank you for that, Jatin. I hope that's helpful for you. I'm just going to take a scroll down here. Okay, I can see that we've had a couple of questions come through from people in relation to how the programme will be delivered in September 2021. So obviously at the moment it's difficult for us to give a firm answer for that. September, we haven't even quite started our September 2020 programme as yet, though a large number of our cohort have quite recently landed in Oxford. I've spoken to a few of them, and some of them are currently doing their quarantine in here in Oxford, depending on what part of the world they have come from. So I think the best thing to do here is to maybe give you all an idea of our plan for the first semester for our current class, so our 2020 class, and hopefully that will give you a bit of a feel for what you can maybe anticipate if you were to join us in 2021, though obviously should say that a lot can change between now and then, and so it's impossible for us to obviously say at the moment how exactly the programme would be delivered in 2021. So for our current class, who will be starting launch in about 2 weeks' time, Their first semester is going to be a fusion of digital delivery and some small in-person teaching. So the first semester of the Oxford MBA focuses on the core courses. So those are the mandatory the mandatory parts of the MBA program. And they include the kind of different fundamentals of business that you would anticipate finding on an MBA. So accounting, analytics, business finance, marketing strategy, etc. So essentially a lot of that content will be delivered digitally to our students, and then that digital delivery will be supplemented by small in-person group tuition, and that tuition will take place at the business school. The students will be working in groups of approximately about 20, and they will change into different groups of 20 depending on the particular core course that they're studying. So in terms of being able to form connections with one another, get to know other people on the cohort and start to build their MBA network, the groups of 20 who'll be working together in person will change to give students the opportunity to meet and mingle with other members of the class. The university is open. It's important to stress that as well. So as I mentioned, the majority of our incoming class have arrived or will shortly arrive in Oxford. They'll be taking up their college memberships, they'll be taking up their places in accommodation across Oxford, and will have sessions at the business school, as I said, fewer than they usually would and in smaller groups. We actually see the introduction of the small group tuition as a big advantage on the Oxford MBA. So for any of you who are familiar with Oxford University and kind of the pedagogic approach, the tutorial is really the pedagogic style that is synonymous with Oxford University. And on the MBA, because we essentially try to pack so much content into a 12-month program, it has been difficult to find ways to introduce that kind of tutorial style tuition to the MBA. And so actually this new format for that first semester of digital delivery and the small group tuition will actually give our students the opportunity to experience that more tutorial style approach. So we really feel it's going to be hugely beneficial. It obviously also means that when you're in those smaller groups, you have more access to faculty, more opportunity to collaborate, to share ideas, opinions, debate, all of those kind of things. So we think it's going to be a really successful model. The second and third semester still remain under review at the moment. I think in an ideal world, as the year rolls out, we would like to increase the amount of in-person tuition that we can offer. But obviously any decisions around that will be adhering to government guidelines and any restrictions on social distancing that are in place at that point. So I'm afraid I can't answer about exactly what September 2021 will look like, but I hope that gives you a feel for what our incoming class will be enjoying once they start with us in a couple of weeks' time. So thank you for that question, Matilda. Can also see that there's a couple of questions here in relation to the online GMAT. Thank you, Glenn. I can see yours is one of the first that have come through. The answer is yes. So we are accepting the online version of the GMAT or the GRE for any of you who are hoping to submit applications for entry in 2021. We're very conscious of the fact that depending on where you are based in the world, you may still have some difficulty accessing physical test centres. And so we are still accepting the online version of both tests. One thing that I would flag with the online GMAT is it's slightly different to when you go to the physical test centre, in that there is a delay in securing your score after you sit the test. I think it's a period of about 7 days that you have to wait to actually get your score through if you do the online GMAT. So do keep that in mind if you are somebody who plans to take the GMAT quite close to the application deadline. Just make sure that you give yourself enough time to actually get your score report through. You will need to upload that as part of your application. But for anybody who's dialed in who is worried about being able to access a physical test centre, the good news is that we will be accepting the online version of both of those tests. So thank you very much for sending that in. Great question here from Kartika. Thank you, Kartika, about the Oxford 1+1 programme and a scholarship opportunity in connection with this. So Kartika has asked, is there any Oxford 1+1 MBA full scholarship? The answer to that, Kartika, is yes. So there's an excellent scholarship opportunity attached to the 1+1 programme. It's called the Pershing Square Scholarship. We award, I think it's 6 Pershing Square scholarships every year, and the pool of applicants that we have for the 1+1 is considerably smaller than the pool of applicants that we have for the straight MBA. So in terms of opportunity to secure that scholarship, the possibility is pretty good in terms of the numbers. The Pershing Square Scholarship, if you were successful in securing one, essentially covers the full cost of your tuition for both years that you would be with us in Oxford. So it would cover your tuition fees for the year that you are pursuing your MSc, and also your tuition costs for the year that you are on the MBA. It also provides a partial living allowance for both years that you would be with us in Oxford as well. So it's an excellent scholarship opportunity, and definitely something, if you are someone who's considering the 1+1, that I would recommend looking into. There's lots of useful information on our website about the Pershing Square organisation, about the scholarship. It does involve an additional element of application, so you will need to write an additional essay if you want to be considered for Pershing Square, and then if you were successful in being shortlisted, there is an additional interview attached as well. But lots of useful information on our website, in particular in relation to the types of candidates that Pershing Square is looking for. So I would recommend going onto the website and reading a little bit more about that. But yeah, it is an excellent scholarship opportunity attached to the 1+1. So thank you for that question. I can see another good question here from Anoop. Thank you, Anoop. So this is asking, I guess, a little bit more in relation to the type of students who join us on the Oxford MBA. Anoop's question is in connection to age, and in particular asking if age is a barrier for us on the Oxford MBA. The answer to that is no. So there are no age restrictions on the Oxford MBA. The average age of our current class is about 29, I think, but it ranges from about 23 all the way up to 40. So there's absolutely no concern that if you're, you know, slightly closer towards 40 than you are to 23, that would work against you in terms of the application process in any way. The only thing I would ever flag to candidates in relation to age is that if you are a younger candidate, you do need to be able to demonstrate a good level of maturity, and be able to provide us with some evidence of your leadership ability, in particular if you're kind of at the lower end of the scale in terms of professional experience. You want to make sure that you can demonstrate that through your application. If you are somebody who's a little bit more senior, who has quite a lot of professional experience, you'll probably be looking to show us through your application why you feel now is a good time for an MBA. Obviously, if you're more experienced, then you'll be looking to maybe pick out the specific skills that you would be able to develop on an MBA that you feel will allow you to continue to progress in your career. So probably slightly different approaches in terms of the application, but absolutely age is not a barrier. So if you are somebody who has an interesting story, great professional experience, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So please don't let that hold you back at all. There's a lot of great questions here. Thank you guys so much for sending so many in. Another great question here in relation to the 1+1. Thank you, Harshiv. So Harshiv is asking if a person has applied for the 1+1 and they're accepted into one program and rejected in the other, could they join the one they've been accepted to, or do they have to be accepted in both? So I would say there's not a blanket answer to this, Harshiv, but in the majority of cases, If you were accepted onto the MBA, but not accepted onto your chosen MSc, in the majority of cases, you would still be able to join us on the MBA. So if that happens, I would just recommend that you contact our team to let us know that you haven't been accepted onto your chosen MSc, but that you would still like to pursue the MBA and join the incoming class. The committee will just review your application to make sure that they feel that you're ready for the MBA without doing your MSc beforehand. But for the majority of our candidates, that is the case, and they're able to join us on the MBA. There are sometimes some exceptions to that. So if somebody, again, is maybe a little bit younger or has slightly less professional experience than what we're looking for on the MBA, for somebody like that, we may make it conditional that they have to complete their MSc before coming on the MBA. But as I said, for a number of our applicants who that does happen to, they're able to join us on the MBA the following year. So it's still a possibility. If you apply for the 1+1 and don't get onto your MSc, just reach out to our team and let us know, and then we can let you know the next steps from there. Thank you for that question. Just taking a look to see if I can find any kind of more common questions. Great question here from Christophorus. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I haven't. Who's asking about the requirement for work experience for Oxford MBA candidates, which I've touched on briefly there when I was speaking about age. But just to give you guys a little bit more information about that. So the mandatory requirement on the Oxford MBA is that applicants must have at least 2 years of full-time work experience. That has to have been gained since your graduation and doesn't include internships. So that's the minimum requirement. The current class average, I think, is 5 years. So that will just give you a feel of kind of the, you know, where the majority of our class are at. But similar to what I mentioned in relation to age, we will have people who have more experience than that, and we'll also have some people who are at the lower end of the scale in terms of professional experience. The reason why professional experience is important in terms of pursuing an MBA is that we want you to be able to actively contribute to the MBA class. We want you to be able to share your views. We want you to be able to draw on your professional experience and on the skills that you've been able to develop to date. So it's really important to us to make sure that you have that minimum experience of 2 years to allow you to do that. We're really keen on the Oxford MBA to put together a cohort that is collaborative. We believe strongly in the idea that you can benefit as much from the experiences of those around you as you can from the programme itself and from the faculty. And so it is important for us to make sure that you have enough experience that will allow you to do so. But the mandatory requirement in terms of minimum working experience is 2 years. So I hope that helps you. Question here from Mikhail. Thank you, Mikhail, for your question. Mikhail is asking if you have to take the GMAT before applying. The answer to that, Mikhail, is yes. So you will need to sit your GMAT or GRE in advance of submitting your application, and you will have to provide us with your score and upload your score report when you are completing your application. It won't be possible for our team to process your application and to move you through to review if you don't do that. So if you are someone who is dialed in this morning, who hasn't looked at the GMAT or GRE yet, but is keen to apply in the next recruitment cycle for entry in 2021, my recommendation in relation to both of those tests is to give yourself a good period of time to prepare for them. I would recommend a minimum of about 3 months if you're starting from scratch with the GMAT or the GRE, to make sure that you have ample time to dedicate to preparing before you sit them. So if you're dialed in and you haven't looked at either of those yet, the earliest stage deadline that you would probably want to consider would be our stage 3 deadline, which falls in early January. But yeah, you absolutely need to have sat the test before you submit your application. Just going to take a look through. Great question here from Whitney in relation to references as part of your application. So Whitney's asked, for the 2 references, is there a preference for the second one to be academic versus another professional one? So the answer to that, Whitney, is no. So my advice in relation to references is to choose 2 people who know you well, who can write about you with a good level of detail, and who are essentially advocates for you. A lot of people do kind of weigh up whether they should have one academic and one professional. My view on academic references is that unless you have very recently come out of academia, or you've kept up a very close relationship with the person who you would be asking to provide your academic reference, it's really difficult for them to write about you with the level of detail and also about your current skill set. I think also for academics, you know, they work with so many students across their career that it can actually be difficult for them to remember every single student who they have worked with. I think students tend to remember them more rather than the other way around. So in that instance, often I feel like having 2 professional references works better, just because if they're people who you've worked with kind of across the past 3, 4, 5 years, they know you well, they know your skill set, and they're able to provide a good amount of information about you. So absolutely no pressure to make sure that one is academic or one is professional. Just make sure that you choose 2 people who know you well, and who can advocate for you in terms of your MBA application. So thank you, Whitney. I hope that answers your question. Just taking a look to see. Great question here from Rishik in relation to the application stage deadlines. So Rishik is asking, by what round should international applicants send in their applications? So that's the first part of his question. So important to flag that our application stage deadlines are the same for everybody. So it doesn't matter what part of the world you are applying from. We run 4 stage deadlines in every recruitment cycle. And those deadlines and dates are the same regardless of where in the world you are submitting your application from. The Oxford MBA is a hugely international class, so 95% of our class will be international, and we have a very small percentage of the cohort who actually come from the UK. So you will definitely be in the majority in terms of being what you describe as an international applicant. The second part of Rishik's question is it okay to send your application in by the stage 3 deadline? Absolutely yes. So I'll speak a little bit about the stage deadlines here, just in case I can see there's a couple of other questions in relation to this as well. So our first stage deadline falls this coming Friday. Anybody who is dialed in who is planning to submit your application at that point, very best of luck to you. If you are somebody who hasn't looked at the application yet or started it, I wouldn't recommend targeting the stage 1 deadline at this point. The stage 2 deadline falls at the end of October. So if you're at the earlier stages of your application, targeting that would probably make more sense. There's not a huge difference in terms of stage 1 and stage 2 in terms of application numbers and in terms of the number of offers that is made. Our third stage deadline falls in early January. That is our biggest stage deadline in terms of the number of applications that we will receive. The main reason for that, I think, is that it aligns with the wider university's deadline for scholarships. So if you want to be considered for a number of the scholarships that we offer on the Oxford MBA, you do need to make sure that your application is in by the stage 3 deadline in January. As a result, that tends to be our biggest application stage and when we'll get the bulk of our applications through. Our fourth stage deadline falls in April, and that stage is probably the one that is most different. We get a smaller number of applicants in stage 4, and we also make a smaller number of offers in stage 4. So because we've had the bulk of our applications through up to that point, a lot of the places in the class have already been filled, and so we do make a smaller number of offers in stage 4. It's a bit more competitive. Stage 4, we also run a wait list sometimes, depending on the number of applications that we have through. And important to flag as well with stage 4 that there are more limited opportunities in terms of scholarship and funding at that point. So we absolutely do still make place offers at stage 4, but it is important just to be aware that it's a more competitive stage, and that if you are somebody who is interested in scholarships and funding, then I would definitely recommend targeting stages 1, 2 or 3 rather than stage 4. So thank you for that, Rishik. That's a great question. Just going to scroll through. I can see that there's quite a few questions here in relation to career outcomes, which is obviously a hugely important element of an MBA, and I know is information that a lot of people will be interested in. Our most recent employment report has just recently been launched, and that will be available on our website at the moment. So if you are somebody who is interested in learning a little bit more about where our MBA students end up post-MBA in terms of sectors, but also in terms of geography, I do recommend taking a look at that document. It provides a good level of granularity, so you'll be able to look through and see, you know, the different companies that come to Oxford to recruit our students. There's a lot of useful information in it. So I would say if you're interested in more information about that, do please go to our website and download that document. Once you've had a look through that, if you want some more specific information in relation to a particular sector or a particular geography, do feel free to reach out to our team, and we can then either reach out to our colleagues in our Career Development Centre or potentially put you in touch with somebody who might be able to help you as well. But that document is a really useful source of information for anybody who wants to get more of a feel for where our Oxford MBA students end up post MBA. So I would recommend that to all of you. I can see that there's lots of questions as well in relation to application numbers for 2021 entry, in particular in relation to the pandemic. So lots of people are referring here to the number of students who have deferred their admission and how that might impact the recruitment cycle for entry in 2021. So the answer to that is that we don't anticipate it having a huge impact on our recruitment for entry into 2021. So we still plan to run the same number of stage deadlines, as I've mentioned, so the 4 stage deadlines that we always do. We have had a larger number of students than we normally would defer. So there are some places that have already been secured in the 2021 class, but not an enormous number, so there's still plenty of places available. It's always a competitive process to secure a place on the Oxford MBA. It may be slightly more competitive this year just because some places in the class have already been filled, but nothing major. As I said, it hasn't impacted our plans in terms of application stage deadlines or a number of applications that we'll be considering. So the process will still be competitive, as you would anticipate from a business school that's embedded in Oxford University, but please don't let that put you off. As I said, our plan is to recruit as we normally would, and we don't anticipate it having a massive impact on the next recruitment cycle. So thank you to all of you who've sent in questions in relation to that. Another good question here in relation to the 1+1 programme, asking about the connection between your application to your chosen master's programme and your MBA, and essentially if they have to be linked or connected. Thank you for that question, Xavier. That's a really good question and a really interesting one. So the answer to that is not really. The thought process behind the 1+1 is that essentially the first year that you are on programme with us and completing your MSc, gives you the opportunity to do a deep dive into a subject area that you feel is relevant to you. So the relevance of it may be in connection to your career. So it might be an area that you feel that you really would benefit from having an in-depth knowledge and understanding of that subject area to allow you to progress in your career. For some people who pursue the 1+1, that the chosen MSc is more of a passion project. It's a topic that they're passionate about, that they've always wanted to study, and they've now reached a point in their life and career where they have the time to dedicate to it. So your motivation for pursuing the MBA doesn't necessarily have to be connected to your motivation for pursuing the MBA itself. You will, as a 1+1 applicant, when you're completing your MBA application, be asked to write an additional supporting statement where you do explain a little bit more about why you want to pursue the 1+1 and why you feel it's going to be beneficial for you. But I don't think that there has to be a specific link between the two. Obviously, with how the program is structured and doing your MSc first, the idea is that once you've completed the MSc, the MBA then provides you with kind of a more an opportunity to kind of put what you've learned on your MSc into practice in a more practical way. That's the kind of thought process behind the design of the program, but I don't think that there needs to be a very clear-cut connection or motivation between the two. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much. Great question here in relation to connecting with current students and what's the best way to do that. So there's a number of different things that I would recommend here. So the first is always to keep an eye on our website. So throughout the coming months, we will be running a number of different sessions, which we will have some of our current class participate in once they are settled in with us. At the moment, obviously, a lot of these events are virtual. So for example, in the next couple of weeks, we're running our virtual open day, where we'll have a panel of alumni who will be joining us to talk about their experience of the Oxford MBA. As we move through the next academic year, rather than having alumni, we'll sometimes have our current students participate in those sessions. So that's a great opportunity to hear from them and to learn a little bit more about their experience of the Oxford MBA itself. If you are looking to connect with people in advance of submitting an application and want to learn a bit more about the programme and individuals' experience, connecting with our alumni is always a great idea. The easiest way to do that is honestly through LinkedIn. So it's just to do a search and see if you can connect with people that way. We have an amazing alumni community. They're really engaged and they're usually really happy to connect with people and provide some guidance and share their experience with you. So that's probably the quickest way. You can obviously also reach out to our team as well. So you can see our email address is on the slide here. If you're looking to be connected with somebody in particular, so maybe somebody who is coming from the same country as you, or you're keen to maybe try to be connected to somebody who did the 1+1 and studied a particular MSc, or you're interested in being connected with somebody who made a career transition, that's something that you're also considering, you can reach out to our team and we'll then do our best to get you connected with somebody who'll be able to provide you with some guidance. But I do recommend if you want kind of a quicker solution and you're looking maybe to just connect with some alumni who are based in the same country as you, then LinkedIn is a great way to do that. And as I said, our alumni community is extremely engaged and active. So hopefully you'll be able to connect with someone who can provide you with some guidance. Good question here in relation to the application and the word limit in the post MBA plans section. This is actually something that we get asked quite regularly. There isn't a word limit in that section, and actually the post MBA plan section is an aspect of the application that I would always flag as being particularly important. Sometimes I feel like applicants think that, you know, it's an aspect of the application that we don't pay much attention to. We pay a lot of attention to it when we're reviewing applications. It's really important to demonstrate in that section that you have a really good understanding of how your experience to date connects with the skills that you'll develop on the MBA and how that will allow you to pursue your career goals. Also really good in that section to demonstrate to us that if you are someone who has quite a clear idea of where you're looking to get to post MBA, so whether that's accelerating within the sector that you're already in or making a career transition, that you've done a level of research around recruitment for the roles that you're keen to secure. If there's particular companies that you're keen to work for, that you know about how they recruit, you know when they recruit, you know who they're looking for, you can demonstrate kind of connections that you've made and any preparation that you've already done that would make you a strong candidate for those roles. And you know, it's clear really why that section would be important to us. We're very conscious on the MBA that pursuing an MBA is a huge commitment for people. It's a big commitment financially. It's also a big commitment in terms of your time, a year out of your career and a year away from family and friends as well. So we really want to feel confident that the Oxford MBA can get people to where they are looking to go. And so in that post MBA plan section, it's definitely worth dedicating some time to when you're completing your application, and no word limit in that section. So you can provide as much detail as you would like. So thank you for that question. I can see that there's a lot of questions here that are kind of very specific to individual profiles. So I would kind of flag, if you are someone who has sent in a question like that, I'd recommend reaching out to our team, again, via the email address that you can see on the slide here. Alternatively, there is the option to complete a profile review form on our website. If you are somebody who would like a member of our team to take a look at your profile individually and give you a little bit of guidance around a possible application for you. It's obviously difficult to answer those questions on this type of webinar when we have a large number of people who have dialed in. Great question here about scholarships. So thank you for sending this in. So it's a general question just asking to talk a little bit about the scholarships that are available. So very happy to do that. So there are a large number of scholarship and funding options available on the Oxford MBA. If you are someone who's looking for a little bit more information about this, again, do check out the scholarship and funding page on our website for more information. So there are a bank of scholarships available that we manage at the business school itself. For those scholarships, there's no additional element of application attached. So if you apply and you are successful in securing a place on the Oxford MBA, you will automatically be considered for those scholarships once you have secured your place offer. We award those scholarships at the end of every stage deadline. So again, there would be some available at the ends of stages 1, 2 and 3. As I've mentioned already, with stage 4, there is a smaller number of scholarship options available to you. So no additional element of application attached. If you are somebody who wants to be considered for those scholarships, they are competitive, just as I've mentioned, the application process itself is. So you want to feel really confident that you're submitting with as strong an application as you possibly can, if you would like to be considered for those scholarship awards. Strength of application is in all areas of the application. So we do review applications holistically. We will take all aspects of your application into account when reviewing them, inviting you to interview and making place offers. There's also then a number of other scholarships that are available that we run in connection with the wider university and with some external partners. For a lot of those scholarships, there is an additional element of application attached. And so it might be, like I mentioned with Pershing Square, so writing an additional essay, and then potentially going on to have an additional interview if you are somebody who was shortlisted for one of those awards. For those, the most important thing to flag is that you would need to make sure that you get your application in by the stage 3 deadline. So again, if you want to give yourself the best opportunity to be considered for all of the scholarships that are available, applying in one of the first 3 stages is definitely recommended, but you would need to make sure that you have your application in by the stage 3 deadline in January. So I hope that helps. As I said, do take a look on our website for more specific information about the different scholarships. You'll notice that there are some that will be more specific in terms of only being available maybe to female applicants, some that are region specific, but then others that are looking for a specific kind of profile of person. So the SCOL scholarship is a good example of that, which is a scholarship essentially supporting candidates who are social entrepreneurs. So do take a look at the individual scholarships that are available on the website. And again, if you have any specific questions about those, you can reach out to us and we can provide you with some more information. Another question here in relation to the 1+1. Thank you, Khadija, asking which course starts first. Is it the MBA or the MSc? For the 1+1, you have to do the MSc first. So that's how the program is designed. It's first year doing the MSc, doing your deep dive into the subject area that you've chosen, and then that's followed up with the MBA and the opportunity to apply what you've learned in a more practical setting. If you are somebody who is on the MBA and who then decides that you would like to spend another year in Oxford and potentially do an MSc, that's absolutely possible. We do have a number of people who will do that each year, who essentially realise that having 1 year in Oxford just isn't enough and that they want to spend a second year with us. In that case, you can obviously apply for an MSc during the year that you're doing your MBA, but you wouldn't be a 1+1 candidate. So in order to be a 1+1 candidate, you have to indicate it at the point of application, and then you'll complete your MSc before completing your MBA. Thank you for that question. I can see a question here about international experience, and how important is that when you're applying to Oxford. So international experience and international exposure is one aspect that we would look for in relation to your professional experience. It's not a mandatory requirement, so there's absolutely nothing to say that if you are someone who hasn't had the opportunity to gain international experience across your career to date, that you wouldn't be able to submit a successful application. It's one thing that we look for. Other things that we would look for in relation to your professional experience is progression that you've had across your career to date, also any leadership opportunities that you've had across your career to date. So it's important, yes, and if you are someone who's gained international experience, you should flag that in your application and give us a sense of how you feel that's benefited you and how you feel it will allow you to add to the MBA cohort, but it's certainly not a mandatory requirement. You'll obviously maybe also have had the opportunity for international exposure in other ways outside of your career as well, and so if that is the case, you can maybe flag that in your supporting statement, or potentially in other aspects of the application as well. So important, yes, but certainly not a deal breaker in terms of the application. I'm really conscious that we are coming close to the end of the time. I'm just going to take a look through and see if there's anything else. That is kind of connecting. Great question here from Mia that again I can see there's a couple of similar ones. It's basically asking if it's possible to do other courses outside of the business school during the year that you're doing the MBA. So in particular, Mia's asking if it's possible to do another degree at the same time that you would be doing the MBA. The answer to that is 100% no. So the Oxford MBA is a full-time 12-month program. In terms of the program design, it includes absolutely everything that you would maybe anticipate finding on a 2-year MBA, but compacted into a 1-year program. And so as a result, it's an incredibly busy, incredibly intense year. And it really makes it impossible for you to be doing any kind of additional study outside of what you would be doing on the MBA. And the time commitment on the MBA is pretty big. So essentially, if you were on program, you would find that you would be in class, you know, essentially kind of from like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That's just engaging with the academic content of the Oxford MBA. There's obviously then a huge number of co-curricular opportunities that you will have to engage with, in addition to opportunities that will come your way in connection through your college as well. So we would always say it's possible to do 2 things to quite a high standard outside of your MBA commitment. So that might be being involved in one of our co-curricular labs, so our finance lab or our impact lab. It might also be playing a sport for your college, or being involved with the Oxford Union. So there's definitely the possibility for things outside of the business school, but in terms of committing to other courses or any other kind of study while on the MBA, there certainly wouldn't be time for that. So thank you for that question, Mia. I can see I still have lots of questions, so I'm going to keep going for another 5 minutes or so. If anybody does need to jump off, please feel free to do so, and thank you for joining us. I know that we're going a little bit over time. Just going to take a look and see any other common connections. Great question here from Jose. Thank you for this, Jose, asking if there'll be a virtual class session available for prospective applicants. The answer to that, Jose, is absolutely yes. So as I've mentioned already, we have our virtual open day coming up in the next couple of weeks. I think it's on September 22nd and September 24th. And one of the sessions that we will be running as part of the virtual open day will be a taster lecture that will be run by one of our faculty. I think it's Professor Andrew Stevens who's running it, and it's going to have a marketing focus. But yeah, absolutely recommend doing that. We run a number of kind of taster lectures and faculty-led sessions across the year, so do keep an eye out on our website and sign up for them. They're a really great way to get a feel for the programme itself and the type of tuition that you can anticipate if you were to join us on the Oxford MBA. So definitely recommend to all of you to look up our virtual open day and join us for a few sessions on that if you can. Great question here from Harshiv, again in relation to the GMAT, if it's possible to send an updated GMAT score for consideration after submitting your application. The answer to that is yes, Harshiv, but you would need to do it probably quite soon after the deadline, or as close to the deadline as possible. So if you're someone who gets your application in a couple of weeks in advance of the deadline, and you then take the GMAT again and you get an improved score, you can reach out to our team and let us know, and we can then update your application. Obviously, if it moves a little bit further down the line and your application is already being reviewed and we've made decisions about interview selection, it would be too late for us to consider it at that point. So yes, it is a possibility, but again, you would want to be targeting submitting the improved score as close to the deadline as you possibly can. Great question from Martin. I think I've touched on this already, but I'll just reiterate because I can see there's quite a few questions in relation to it, is about how we regard the GRE in relation to the GMAT. Absolutely holds the same weight for us. So we have no preference for the GMAT over the GRE. We hold both in the same regard. Best advice in relation to those things is to choose the test that suits you best. If you are someone who feels that the GRE suits you better than the GMAT, then absolutely go for the GRE and submit a GRE score. As I said, as a guide in relation to GRE, we say you should be targeting a score of 160 verbal, 161 quant. So that's a combined score of 321. But as with the GMAT, the GRE or GMAT score that you provide is one aspect of the application. It's an important aspect, yes, but we will review your application holistically and we will take into account all of the other aspects of the application when we are deciding who we would like to shortlist for interview. If you would like some more specific guidance about your GMAT or GRE score, do reach out to our team and we can provide you with a little bit more guidance based on your particular profile. Another question here in relation to the GMAT. You can tell that we're close to an application stage deadline when there's so many questions around GMAT scores. This one is about what's the average GMAT score. So the median for our current class is 690. So that's the median score for our current class. Similar to what I mentioned with the age profile earlier, we will have some people on programme who joined us with lower GMAT scores and we will have people who joined us with higher GMAT scores. So it's good to have 690 as a guide in terms of the average score of our current class. But as I said, we review holistically, so the GMAT or GRE score isn't the only thing that we would take into account. Great question here from Kishan, again in relation to the application and the online assessment. So Kishan is asking if you need to complete the online assessment by the stage 1 deadline to be considered for stage 1, or if you can submit your application by September 11th and then complete the video assessment later within a required number of days. My recommendation in relation to the online assessment is aim to submit your application 3 to 4 days before the deadline. That way you can dedicate a little bit of time to practicing with the online assessment, which there is the capacity to do before you actually submit your online assessment for real. We do need you to submit your online assessment by the stage deadline. So you do need to aim to get your online assessment videos through to us by September 11th if you are aiming for stage 1. So I hope that helps. Thank you very much, Kishan. Just one final troll through. I know we've gone way over time. Question for Arushi about whether you can apply for scholarships after submitting your application. The answer to that, Arushi, is yes. So if you apply in stage 1 or stage 2, and then you do want to apply for some of the scholarships that are offered in connection with the wider university or external partners, you just need to make sure that you get your application for those scholarships in before the stage 3 deadline in January. But you can submit an application for those after you have submitted your MBA application and even after you have secured your place offer. And that's certainly possible, especially if you come through in stages 1 or stage 2. Question here asking if you can get your CV assessed before submitting an application. The answer to that is yes. So as I mentioned already, there is the option to complete a profile review form on our website, and that does allow you to upload your CV as well. That will then come through to our team and we will review your CV for you. We'll send you some guidance in relation to potentially submitting an application, so you can have access to that information before you make a firm decision about whether or not you would like to apply for the Oxford MBA. So anyone who's dialed in who would like to do that, I do encourage you to do so. I think that's pretty much all I'm going to get to. Thank you all so much for dialing in this morning. We've had a huge number of people join us, and we've had a lot of great questions come through. So thank you very much to everybody who sent questions in. Sincere apologies that we haven't managed to get through more of them. I hope that some of the ones that I've answered were helpful for a lot more of you that have dialed in this morning. I know I've said this a couple of times already, but we do really encourage you to reach out to our team. Our email address is on the slide that you can see on the screen here. We'd be delighted to hear from you, very happy to provide you with some guidance around potential applications, or provide you with any additional information that you would like about the Oxford MBA programme. Very best of luck to any of you who are working on applications and submitting them in time for the stage 1 deadline this coming Friday, and to anybody else who's dialed in who's targeting one of the stage deadlines a little bit further down the line. We'll look forward to keeping in touch with you and hopefully hearing from you in the next couple of weeks and months. Wishing you all a great Tuesday, and thank you so much once again for joining us.